we're having a global effect on the things that we're doing. Even if it seems like you're just doing a JSET to Europe, developing those relationships, you never know where those relationships could lead. If there were, God forbid, to be, a conflict in that region, right? Guess who has the direct connect to, the commander of, the Hunsof? That relationship in itself is worth more than you can imagine. That's a foot in the door. That's a opportunity to plan, to strategize. There's always a bigger picture. It may not always seem that way, especially during peacetime, but understand that even during peacetime, we're developing things that have long-term lasting effects and may be utilized later on down the road.
Welcome to the Infinite Grit Podcast. This is the show for those preparing to earn their place in special operations and other elite tactical careers. We break down the training, mindset, and strategies required to get selected and continue performing long-term. These are proven principles to help you build the body, the mind, and resilience to step into the fight. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Infinite Grit Podcast. Today, we are talking about the pros and cons of going Special Forces in 2025. And today, CJ, or Coach CJ, Carlton Joyner, is joining us in the studio. If you guys want to hear his story, we're not going to be going over in depth today, but we did a full podcast for him sharing his entire journey training up for and throughout Special Forces. You can find that in the description below. I'll drop a link in it. But other than that, how you doing, brother?
Good, man. Yeah, check that podcast out. It's about 6.5 hours. Super eventful. No, I'm good, man. Just hanging out. Ready to talk about some things.
Oh yeah. So recently, I don't know if you keep up on all the SF drama in the YouTube world, but there's been a whole bunch of videos come out really highlighting the negatives inside of Special Forces, which, like, objectively speaking, when I got to SF, some of it kind of caught me off guard. I think for a lot of dudes, it's easy to kind of put it on the pedestal and forget that you're still in the Army and you still have other requirements outside of being a Green Beret. And it can kind of put a bad taste in your mouth, especially if you're going into it unexpected. So a lot of what the other videos have covered is the admin requirements, the additional duties, the kind of lack of freedom, the training requirements, especially being top-down driven, lack of deployments, things like that. So that is what we're going to dive into today. When you first showed up to group, CJ, were you surprised by anything that you had to do outside of just being a Green Beret, or was it, pretty much mission focused because that time was, Afghanistan was up and kicking?
Yeah, when I showed up, it was pretty much, I deployed in 2 weeks. Like, I showed up, I did my green platoon, obviously, and then once I got done with that, I showed up to battalion, and then my senior showed up and was like, "Hey, man, we're deploying in 2 weeks." So I was like, "All right, cool. I guess we're going to hit the road." But as far as once we got back from deployment, I don't think I was really surprised. I never expected it to be just, all bang, all the time. We're just going to be, getting after it constantly. I had already been in the reserves for a little bit before that, so I kind of got a taste of the big Army a little bit. So my expectations were already really, really low from what I had experienced. So, like, anything was going to be better than that. But I don't think I was caught off guard. But yeah, I think we get more into, like, support battalion and, kind of expectations of what I thought that might look like. But yeah.
Yeah. What did you think? What do you mean?
Well, I guess I thought, when you get a whole battalion, like, that's supposed to be, battalion asset that's supposed to be taking care of, administrative stuff for us, kind of check on our six, and then, you drop off the same S1 packet, 5 or 6 times for pay, and you never get paid. That's the kind of stuff that was, like, shocking to me. I was like, dang, like, I thought we'd be getting taken care of in that aspect, but it was kind of hit or miss. Never always bad, but
Right.
sometimes always bad.
Or they're gone at 1400 before you even get back from the range. You can't even
Yeah.
go in there and turn anything in. Yeah, that was definitely one of the big things that I noticed too. And I deployed shortly after getting to group, so my initial impressions was like, this is exactly what I expected, and I was, happy with how everything was going. But I really noticed a big shift in the job after Afghanistan ended and throughout the whole COVID thing, obviously. I think after the war ended, a lot of the focus was changed, and there was kind of like this unsettling, didn't really know what to do, but had to fill time slots, spend money, do all this stuff, and a lot of kind of BS came out of it. And I always talk shit about officers, but I think a lot of it is kind of officer driven and like the politics of it and like them needing to get an OER or do something notable during their very short period of time within group or within this, leadership position and then pushing stuff down. And a lot of times it can kind of fall on the team to do. But I guess to dive into it, for me on the admin side, being an 18 Charlie, I knew that there was going to be a big requirement to do logistics, but I didn't expect to have kind of like what you said, like very minimal support. You have one support guy for an entire company and you're trying to move equipment to a different country, you're trying to track down equipment, you're doing, inventories all the time. So it legitimately ends up eating up a ton of your time. Whereas I thought, kind of on the front side of going SF, like you're going to be skill first, Green Beret first, and then, like really put a lot into training and then kind of do the other stuff to fill the gaps. Whereas it was kind of like 70-30 sometimes, depending on what was going on. But a big emphasis and a big time commitment was required to put towards that stuff. Um, so I guess in regard to the videos that have come out recently about like the frustrations inside of the regiment, the admin side definitely has a lot of truth to it, and all of the stuff that you're required to do outside of just being a Green Beret and keeping up with your 15, 20 different skill sets or certs that you have to stay current on. As an 18 Echo, did you experience any of that stuff or have any frustrations with like the additional duties?
Yeah, I mean, 18 Echo, anything plugs into the wall, as the saying goes, you're responsible for it. Guys, iPads, cell phones, whatever it may be. Uh, but for the most part, yeah, there were certain things like, you got to put in your comma request, you got to, request keys, you got to do all this stuff, and a lot of it was just kind of, you know, figure it out as you go. And you've got, an S6 section that's going to be either responsive to your needs and helpful, or kind of depends on who that OIC and COIC is of that section, whether or not they're going to be effective in helping you get what you need. So it was definitely a, just like anything in SF, a steep learning curve, But once you kind of figured out your systems, you knew your guy, and the S6 that was your go-to. Everybody's what SF guys are good at, building those relationships, and you kind of do that throughout the battalion. Once you establish those, uh, now you've got a go-to, and you can knock out most things. But with the constant shifting around of personnel, that, or you come back from a deployment and it's somebody different now, so you're reinventing the wheel over and over again. So it can be laborious on the admin side. There's a lot of frustration that comes with it, but it's all for an end state of to do the fun stuff. That's how I always kept it in perspective. It's like, yeah, I got to do all this stuff. I got to do all these annual certs. I got to do these trackers that come down at 5 o'clock for whatever it might be. Maintenance bay. Whatever. Just always try to keep in perspective. Like, well, we got to do it. It's got to be done. If we don't, we're not going to be able to, do any of the fun stuff. So.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of times too, it's almost, a double-edged sword. Like a team is set up with the different roles, with the different responsibilities, and guys are sourced or recruited that are self-starters and that can get the job done, figure out problems, things like that. So what ends up happening is because a team is self-sustaining, you almost dig yourself into like a hole where you're going to be working a lot to be self-sustaining, just outside of just the skill sets of being a Green Beret as well. And I'm not. We don't need to go super in depth or make it like a bitch session because you're 100% right. Like a lot of that stuff is a necessary evil to do the cool stuff. Unfortunately, it does take up a little bit more time than I expected going into it, and kind of like what you said, because the I think the support battalions are not utilized to their full extent or for full capabilities. But there all are also some definite pros in regard to going special forces, even in 2025. And for me, one of the biggest things that I experienced inside of my career in SF that outweighs all of the BS and the army stuff that's going to come with anywhere you go inside of the military is the time or the being on a team, working closely with guys like yourself, travel, skills learned, unique opportunities, and then obviously the pride of becoming a Green Beret and going through something challenging and doing things like that. So for you, do you think the pros of going SF personally outweighed all of the admin and all of the BS associated with being in the Army and having to do those admin tasks?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I think the big thing is, you kind of touched on it there at the end. Is kind of we could sit here and talk about all the negatives that come with the support that we receive at group, but at the end of the day, we're not above it. We signed up for it. We're all a team. The whole battalion, all of group. We're all trying to accomplish the same mission essentially. So to think that we're above admin or we're above the guys that are trying to support us, even though they might not be the highest caliber or they're doing their best. Perspective is a son of a bitch. To really know what is their holdback and why they can't support us as much as they like to might not always be very clear to us. So I would say 100% it's worth it, just in the aspect that you get to spend time with guys that actually give a shit, and you get to do things that actually make a difference in the world. They're not small scale things. These things that we set out to do. Guys in the future that are wanting to go to group or are in group currently. Their actions have repercussions not only within the unit but in the entire world. You'll see headlines in newspapers about things that guys are doing overseas or even stateside. So it it is they are big things that we are doing. On a might seem like on a small scale, the day to day things that we do and accomplish, but they do have worldwide repercussions. Strategic and global impact. So just knowing that you're having that kind of impact uh, should be enough to kind of light that fire to let let the small things kind of dissipate, let the bullshit kind of fall to the side, and focus in and lock in and say, well, yeah, I got to do all this bullshit, but at the end of the day, I'm doing things that fucking matter. So
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. And like I was guilty of this myself at times during my career of like, if you're hammered and with not just hammered like drunk, but hammered with things that are coming down the pipeline, like having to do a ton of inventories or a command climate or a command change where you have big inventory or big kind of property book changeovers, that can be frustrating. And I was 100% guilty of like, focusing on that negative aspect. And I think it's very, very easy to do because I think we are a lot of times critical of a lot of the environments that we're in. And because we can focus so much on like optimization and progress and efficiency, when something doesn't align with that, it becomes a big problem for us and we can kind of tend to dwell on it. And it's easy to get into those weeds without zooming out and looking at like the whole picture of like, this is the opportunity that you have. This is the impact that you potentially have. This is like, even on a more selfish basis, like these are the skill sets that you get to develop throughout this time. These are the schools you get to go to. These are the unique opportunities you have. Like, we, during my time on a team, we got paid to go ride horses. We got paid to go do like advanced medical courses and all this stuff. Like, where else would you get the opportunity to do such a wide range of things and develop such a wide range of skill sets aside from an environment like special forces? So I think, for the guys listening, just understand that a lot of the videos you see online kind of critiquing the regiment, I think it's good to kind of have that critique and provide insight to the higher ups as to what the frustrations are inside the regiment. Hopefully, it could possibly, make an impact on it down the road. But I don't think it's beneficial long term to just focus on those negative aspects without highlighting all of the positive attributes that someone can develop throughout going through this process. Um, and then you can a lot of times talk people out of going there because they expected to go kicking doors and be shooting and running and gunning and doing long range marksmanship on a daily basis, and then they're kind of blindsided with the admin work on it. And a lot of times, I talked about it on a recent podcast about like my most impactful deployment. It was when I was with the 160th and, deployed to Iraq, and I got a lot of skill sets out of it. And a lot of the skill sets I got out of that, and then even within group, aside from like the hard skills, was navigating that human terrain, was getting equipment from one place to another, was going through all of those administrative processes. Like there is still a lot to be learned with that is going to be directly applicable to the outside the military, whether you're starting a business, whether you're working in a, someone else's business, going into the climbing the corporate ladder. Like those skills are very necessary, and they're not just unique to special forces or the army as a whole.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're definitely transferable skills. The types of skills that you would think that you would develop are actually not the ones that stick with you. I mean, most of the stuff you learn, the cool guy stuff, are all perishable skills. You don't have access to a long gun, or you don't have access to call for fire. You can't talk to aircraft, do those things. Those skills are gonna perish. But what does stick with you are the navigation of, like you said, the human terrain, being able to direct and manage people, be able to navigate difficult situations and adapt and make you know good decisions and have good outcomes. And that's actually a really you could say cherished skill, especially when you get out and you separate. Not to be talking to guys about focusing on getting out, but
Yeah.
um, but the within all that admin stuff, within all of that stuff that kind of seems like the stuff that hold you back, those are kind of where you kind of develop a lot of those I guess you could say not unnatural, but unexpected skills that we're going to stick with you for life and make you um, much more not
Oh, like
profitable, but
like of a problem
marketable.
solver. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, more marketable.
Um, so kind of for me, my wrap up of it is like, yes, a lot of these frustrations that guys experience or express inside of special forces do hold some weight. I experienced a lot of the same frustrations. If I can go back and kind of, mentor my junior Charlie, junior Green Beret self, this is the conversation that I would have, because there was a lot of times I would let those frustrations kind of get to me without looking at the big picture and looking at the opportunity I was presented with. So if you're going into this environment, go into it with kind of the mindset that CJ touched on. And then for me, I want to ask you the same question, but for me, if I was presented, or if I was 22 years old in a position that I was on the front side of going special forces with the desire to serve in this environment, I would 100% go through it. And I do believe that for me and everything that I wanted to accomplish inside the military, it is still absolutely worth it. So for you, CJ, if you were on the front side of going SF, obviously we might be a little biased, but would you pursue it? And do you think the SF pipeline is, worth pursuing in 2025?
Yeah, I would say 100% it's worth it. I think the big thing is, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, is it's not necessarily, are we at war? Are we going to get to do the cool guy stuff? I think just the environment itself of just being around guys that are like-minded develops you so much more than you realize that I would never trade it for the world. I don't think I would be the person I was today if I wouldn't have won SF. I would have never deployed to Afghanistan. I'd probably still um, be thankful for the opportunities that I had being in group, and I mean being in the Army in general. I would say just you can't discount the tools and skills, the relationships, the experiences. You can't put a price on those things. And you know how many people I've talked to who wish they had the opportunity. Guys who would die to be in the military, but they couldn't because of a heart defect or some kind of medical condition. Uh, so many guys that I've met like that just want to hear the experiences. Like what was it like? What was it like being in the army? Uh, so I wouldn't trade it for the world because there's people literally that would give everything just to experience the things that we've experienced just being in the military alone. So
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that brings up another point too about being in a peacetime military and what organization you want to pursue. And a lot of times I'll hear guys, there's nothing wrong with the Ranger Regiment, but guys want to go Ranger, guys want to go other organizations that are direct action focused, which I understand. And I get it because I remember when I was freaking 18 years old and Afghanistan was kicking off, like, although I look back and I understand how kind of foolish it was. Like I wanted to go to war, I wanted to experience it, and for me, there was almost like a rite of passage. Although I didn't get a ton of experience doing it, I even out like my younger self, kind of put that on a pedestal. So I see that in a lot of younger guys pursuing a career in special operations. They want to be put in a position where they're going to go to combat, and they see SF is focused on kind of a different mission set currently because we're not in an active conflict, and Ranger Regiment's still getting after it, doing like direct action stuff, potentially working with other SMUs and things like that. So for me, I think in an environment, especially a peacetime military, SF is uniquely positioned because you're always going to have some type of mission, whether it's a JSET or a FID or foreign internal defense mission working with another country. Like you will get opportunities to travel, you will deploy, you will learn another language, you will have a lot of different experiences that will broaden your horizon on the world, broaden your understanding. You'll interact with other cultures closely, you'll work with them. And I think that's unique because a lot of other organizations, and again, not to beat up on any of them, I have massive respect for anybody that wants to serve in general and especially in special operations. But a lot of other organizations, you deploy to a place and you work unilaterally. You don't necessarily interact with the local populace. You don't necessarily interact with the host nation's military to the point where you're actually developing relationships with them. And that was always something that I thought was super cool inside of special forces. Like even when we went to Europe and it wasn't a very kinetic or a mission that seems overly important or you're kicking indoors doing all that stuff, like I genuinely had a fantastic time learning a little bit of their language, getting to know the guys, in other militaries, like getting to know their culture, immersing myself in it. And I think that is something unique to SF, and it's going to continue regardless as to whether or not there's a war going on.
yeah, I'd agree with that. And just to touch on the I said it before. We're having you know we're having an effect, a global effect on the things that we're doing. Even if it seems like you're just doing a JSET to Europe, right? Even if you're going to Hungary and you're working with their special operations guys and you're integrating with them, you know that in itself, you know, developing those relationships, you never know where those relationships could lead. If there were, God forbid, to be, a conflict in that region, right? Guess who has a direct connect to, the commander of, the Hunsof, right? That relationship in itself is worth more than you can imagine. Having Green Berets on the ground that can develop those relationships, leave long lasting impressions on guys, and for us to be able to reach out to them years later and be like, hey, what's up, man? Like, oh, what's up, bro? Like, hey, that's a foot in the door. That's a opportunity to plan, to strategize, to so there's always a bigger picture. It may not always seem that way, especially during peacetime, but understand that even during peacetime, we're developing things that that have long-term lasting effects and maybe utilized later on down the road.
Yeah, I've never thought about it like that, to be honest. Like you are as a team deploying on a JSET or into a different area, you are the seed that the overarching entity of the Army is planting in that region. Interesting.
Exactly. It's a presence.
Yeah, no, I love that. So for me, to wrap it up, I think it is absolutely worth it. And if it's something that you guys genuinely want to do, you resonate with the mission, you resonate with the skill sets that come with becoming a Green Beret, you want the pride of being part of the regiment for the entire rest of your life, it is absolutely worth it to pursue. But we wanted to dive into a little bit of questions that we've been seeing or trends that we've been seeing inside of kind of the pre-selection train up environment or guys on the front side of going to it. And lately, we had a conversation on about this morning. A lot of guys have been jumping on PEDs or performance enhancing drugs like SARMs or other substances. And we had a guy, actually, it was a guy that commented on one of my videos on Instagram, and he was like, he said that out of 10 guys, like 7 of them at his selection class had done SARMs during their prep going into it. First off, do you think SARMs or PEDs are needed to be successful in selection?
Bottom line up front, no, you don't need PEDs to be successful. Some people will make the argument, well, if everyone's using them, then I'm at a disadvantage. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that there's more to it than just the physical requirements of selection. That if you believe that you need PEDs to be successful, one, you already have a character flaw, and you're more than likely not somebody that we need. And then two, if you're discounting yourself because other people may be using them, and now you feel like you're at a disadvantage, you're missing the big picture, which is, we're not looking for the fittest guys in the world, right? We're looking for guys that fit the role. We need the right guy for the job. And that's not just, how fast you can run, how fast you can ruck, and, how well you do on a PT test. There's many facets to it. I think that people who are using PEDs have probably lost sight of that fact.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think it comes, we probably indirectly even like contribute to this because we talk about optimizing performance, getting your run times down, getting your physical performance and your ruck times down and things like that. And it is true that you want to be able to exceed the standard. You want to show up ready. You have to be physically capable to get through the environment. But oftentimes, what we see, we talk about it all the time. We have 100% of the guys that we have sent have passed all of the physical requirements at selection, but not 100% have succeeded in selection. Some of them didn't find their points. We had a guy lose a rifle out at land nav. We've had guys get non-selected for being too overbearing during team week. It's like a lot of times it's not the physical aspects that get guys dropped from selection. It's all of the other intangibles or the things that the cadre are looking for, or the ability to make decisions under pressure, or the ability to work in a team. So if you go into it thinking that PEDs is going to or are going to be the solution to your problem and are going to be the deciding factor as to whether or not you're getting selected or you're going to be successful, that is a flawed way of thinking. Because even with physical performance, and obviously we coach guys to get their physical performance as high as possible, there is a point where it no longer has a big impact on your ability to succeed. Like if you're in the top 10%, top 15% of your class, like it's no longer going to, have a substantial benefit or put you on a pedestal to succeed. You still have to make quality decisions in land navigation. You still have to, maintain your presence of mind, be a team player, demonstrate that you are somebody who seeks a solution that can communicate effectively. Like you still have to demonstrate all of the RSAF attributes that they are looking for in guys, and PT or physical performance is just one piece of the puzzle for the entire, what they're looking for, the entire solution.
Yeah, no, I agree with that entirely. The idea that these performance enhancing drugs are going to somehow give you the edge to be selected, I think is a fallacy. And not only that, there's just so many things that go along with using performance enhancing drugs, right? As a novice, for most guys going in, they're pretty young, right? And so their understanding of how these things work is probably slim to none. You might do your research, you might read some Reddit forums, but they're not going to give you insight to the long-term effects of these things that you're putting in your body, right? So if you're getting things on the gray market, you're not 100% certain that these things are third party tested, that you're even getting the things that you're ordering. I've knew guys that ordered SARMs and ended up being, growth hormone concoctions, and they ended up getting, gynecomastia, or guys are taking SARMs and then they get compartmentalization in their you know, calves and their lower back, and they can't run anymore. Like literally within a couple of weeks, they go from being decent runners to barely even be able to run a mile. So the inherent danger of not knowing what you're getting, even if it's having a positive effect, you don't know about the long term effects. A lot of this testosterone that they're putting on the market, gray market stuff. These are bathtub chemists making this stuff. Putting microplastics in these things. This stuff has legitimate long-term effects, and most of this stuff hasn't been studied long enough. I mean, the limited studies we have on some guys would probably refute it, but it's like, they did it on rats, and always with these things, it's an obscene amount that they give them. But most of the reasons these things aren't approved by the FDA is because they've had and shown to within short-term studies with high doses to cause things like cancer or cause issues long-term. So really take the time to put it into perspective. If you're a young guy and you think that PEDs are the only way, and you're not concerned about your long-term health, you need to really reconsider and take some time and think through that. Because when you're our age, and you get in your 30s and your 40s, that's usually when those types of things start showing up, especially in your 50s and 60s. When you start having kids and you got grandkids, I promise you're going to want to be around for those things. And, you don't want to be, grandpa or dad with the heart issue, in his 50s, and, you can't even run and keep up with your kids or your grandkids. So there's serious outcomes from what may seem like pretty benign or not very serious choices at a young age, because we're young, we're able to bounce back pretty quickly. But long term, I would definitely reconsider.
Yeah. And also another thing to think about is that a lot of the substances require some type of PCT or post-cycle therapy. And if you are going into OSUT, like we've had guys, on TRT that are shipping out to basic. Like you have to, it's going to suppress your natural testosterone progression or production, and you have to take a post-cycle therapy, which is usually in the form of an estrogen blocker, so you don't develop issues like gynecomastia. And when you're going to training, when you're going to OSIT, when you're going through, basic training, when you're going out to SFPC, like you're not going to be able to take those substances unless you sneak it in. Then you can get dropped for sneaking, unapproved substances in there. So to me, it's just not worth it long term. And there have been thousands upon thousands of Green Berets who have succeeded without the use of SARMs. Both you and I are two of those guys. So it's not going to make or break your ability to perform in there and be successful.
Yeah, there'll be guys that if there's guys listening to this, and maybe they're experienced with performance enhancing drugs. They'll say, "Oh, it's totally doable," But you're one of few. Most guys that step into this world of gray market performance enhancing drugs, they have no idea about any of it, how it works, how it affects their bodies. They don't understand how a select androgen receptor modulator works on the bodies at the cellular level. They don't truly understand. All they know is they want a result, and so they're going to take whatever somebody who claims to be an expert tells them to do. So yeah, you might have a lot of information. You might truly know how that stuff works, and that's good on you. But for the majority of people, that's not the case. They're novice, and they're just going to do what they're told and take what they're given, and they're not going to understand the repercussions of what they're taking or how to properly get off of those things once they stop. And it's just, yeah, like you said, it's not worth it.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good point. There are going to be people that have a sound plan with it and a sound understanding, but the majority don't. Cool. So recently, the National Guard announced that they are switching the pipeline up and moving Airborne to the backside of selection. What are your thoughts on it? Obviously, you came from the reserves, but you essentially went through the 18X pipeline. So, what are your thoughts on Airborne being moved to the backside of selection currently?
Yeah, I think it makes sense from a mitigation standpoint. You put guys in airborne post selection, less chance of them getting hurt, prior to selection. in my opinion, I think it's kind of, I think it's at this point we do it as like culturally to maintain kind of our our history, but it really has not no relevant place in group. I don't think. I think Airborne's kind of an outdated means of insertion. I'm sure somebody will be like, no, that's not true. No, we did it in 25. We hit the
2003 when we did
we hit the
Iraq
airfield.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we hit the airfield and it was already secured. I had my gun out.
exactly.
No. But I do think, I mean, realistically, Airborne does seem a little antiquated in itself, and it is a huge risk. I mean, I don't know how many guys I've seen on Airborne jumps. I get it. Like, there's a lot of pride behind it. Like Airborne, World War II. Like, I got it. Like that. I think it's awesome as a tradition. But realistically, I see more risk than reward when it comes to Airborne. So many guys getting hurt. Plus, not to mention, we talk about admin stuff, the logistics that goes into, running a jump, getting to a jump, making sure that you're getting your jump paid. So much effort that goes into that. That is, in my opinion, wasted effort. And them putting it at the backside, I think that makes sense for them. Protecting an asset that they could possibly have. But as long term, I don't really understand its place other than tradition and pride. So
Didn't you go to Jump Master too?
I did, yeah. That was my reward school. So amazing. If you
So
ever want a
cool.
really good school that teaches you a lot, go to Jump Master. Yeah, it's really
No, I agree. I think it is pretty adequate, and that is um, a really good point to bring up. I think, from a career progression standpoint, I can see why it kind of sucks for guys not to get airborne school because it's good to have on your SRB. It's cool to have the ability to go to airborne school, even if we disagree with being, staying current and airborne status past the point of being on a team. I don't think it's super necessary. But I think for guys joining the military, I know for me joining the military, one of the things that I wanted to do was go to airborne school. I wanted to be a paratrooper. Like my stepdad was a paratrooper, he was a Green Beret, and I wanted to wear the wings that I saw on his desk as a kid growing up. So it is a tradition thing, and it is something to think about. And I think from a recruiting standpoint, saying like, hey, you are 100% getting airborne school is a big recruiting tool to get guys to join because it is something that sounds really cool. From a logical standpoint and probably an investment standpoint of like where funds are being allocated inside the military, I do agree with putting it on the backside of selection. But from end user guy on the ground, 18 X-ray coming into the pipeline, I can see how it would be kind of a bummer or a frustration that you wouldn't be guaranteed to get airborne school currently.
yeah. I agree.
Next question is, am I ruining my progress if I'm not tracking nutrition?
No, no, you're good, man. Just don't track anything. You'll be fine. If you know the fact that you have the thought to go SF or go into the Army in general is you got superior genetics already. So nutrition's really not a thing you got to worry about. Just eat what you want and train as hard as you can, and you'll be good.
Smart ass, dude. Um, yeah, I mean, the I always tell guys this, like the cool thing about being somebody going to selection or being somebody that is trying to get your performance up with running and rucking, doing all this stuff, not necessarily stepping on a stage and having to be a certain body fat percentage or see your striations on your lats or whatever, is we don't have to track every single calorie that we put into our body. And I would be lying, I would be a bold-faced liar if I told you guys that I have tracked my freaking nutrition every step of the way for my entire life or even when I was training up for these environments. But what I always did is ensure that I'm getting enough of what I need to sustain the training on a daily basis. And for guys who are conscious about eating healthily and getting the protein in, eating quality carbohydrates, getting enough calories. They're tracking their weight on a weekly basis and not seeing huge fluctuations either way, tracking their recoverability or tracking their recovery, tracking their numbers, seeing their progressions, things like that. Then I would say tracking every single calorie you put in is probably not as important. But if you are a guy who struggles with eating, if you are a guy who needs to lose weight, if you are a guy who needs to put on a bunch of mass and you don't, would you say you?
Yeah, this guy.
I need to lose weight too. I'm putting down 6 pounds. But if you're a guy who, needs to put on mass and you struggle because you don't have a big appetite, then in those situations, tracking is very important. We don't need to be, 100% anal or crazy about tracking forever. If we're kind of in that middle ground, but when we're making big body composition changes, or if we're in a final prep phase of going to a big course that's going to decide the future of our entire career, I would say absolutely track. Why not prioritize it and try to get the most out of your training? So you're not ruining progress per se unless you are not getting what you need to on a daily basis. And a foolproof way of ensuring that you're getting the resources and the nutrition that you need on a daily basis is to track what you put into your body.
Yeah. No, I didn't track nothing when I came in. I read Stu Middleman's book, Slow Burn. I learned about the Mediterranean diet, and I used to wake up and eat salad and fish for breakfast, and that was it.
Dude, I
I just ate healthy. I ate as much as I could, and I ate healthy. I used to go to
I
a hometown buffet.
used to go to what?
I would hit the gym, and then I'd go to hometown buffet, and I'd eat all the chicken I could and all the salad until I felt sick. That was my That's what
Oh
I
yeah.
did.
I did you ever hear of Seal Fit back in the day?
No, I mean it's. I'm sure I did. I remember Zombie Fit, and there was all kinds of fits back
Yeah.
then. But
Seal Fit was probably one of the first like tactical fitness ones to come out. It was like Stu Smith, Seal Fit, a couple other ones that were like tactical fitness training for special operations type of thing. And one of the Mark Devine is his name. He really harped on a paleo diet and not tracking your calories, not tracking any of that stuff, but just essentially cutting out processed carbohydrates or highly processed carbohydrates, eating clean things like meat, vegetables, fruit, dairy, etc. And I did that through a deployment in Iraq. I did that when I was training up, and I always felt pretty good with it. Now I'm a lot more well-rounded, but I follow a lot of the same principles of like cutting out highly processed carbohydrates um, or carbohydrates or foods that lack a lot of nutrients but have a lot of calories. So I think eating like that, if you have the discipline to eat like that and you're ensuring that you get enough on a daily basis, then and you're making sure that you're tracking your numbers, then obviously you can get away with it. But for those special cases or guys that need to make drastic changes, tracking your progress is a foolproof way. All right, this one's for you, man. How to train around having young children. How to be selfish with your goal and continue making progress without being too selfish. Or how do you kind of find that balance?
yeah, I mean, you got to understand that as as a husband, as a father, you're the leader of your family unit. So when you have a goal in mind or you're setting out to accomplish something, you have to give clear expectations and clear understanding of what it is that you're doing, right? Because if they don't understand it, then specific if you don't understand it, they're definitely not going to understand it, right? So my advice would be to make sure that everybody in your family understands what it is that you're trying to accomplish and what you need to do to make that accomplishment happen, right? Because it's much more likely that if you lay out clear, concise, you know, plan that you're looking to follow, that everybody in the family can, you know, have an understanding and also help you, achieve that goal, right? There's going to be instances where, you've got to go to the gym late or you got to go to the gym early. You're not going to be able to do drop off, pick up, whatever it might be. But if everyone in the family understands this is why, they understand the why behind the actions, then it makes for a much more positive environment. So that's the biggest thing. Just being very transparent with your family, with your wife, with your kids, um, and reinforcing that and just saying, hey, look, I want to train up to be a Green Beret, and these are the things that I need to accomplish. That I need to go to the gym every single day. I have to eat a certain way, so I can't eat out with you guys. I can't, not all the time. So when you lay out those clear, you know, expectations or what your actions are going to look like going forward, it's no surprise to the family. But it's when you don't lay out those clear expectations to your family and now all of a sudden you're not eating out at dinner with them all the time. You're waking up early. You're telling your wife, "Oh, I can't do pickup because I'm going to the gym." Like, get over it, and she doesn't really understand the why behind it. Then that's when the irritations start to appear. That's when the friction points start to appear, and then you start to unravel, and then you have additional stress on top of the stress you're adding on to yourself trying to accomplish this goal. So, bottom line up front, make sure you clearly understand what your goal is. Outline that goal, explain it to your family, your wife, and your kids. And then that way, whenever you're executing your plan, they understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. And then that way, you guys can work together to come up with a plan of how you guys can best support each other through that process.
Oh, love that. I think that wraps it up pretty well. And then next one is how to deal with coming back from selection unselected. Um, I'll touch on one. I'll touch on my experience, not with selection, but with EOD. I can't really answer the one with selection, but I have some ideas for it. But I failed EOD when I first joined the military. I joined at 18, had really bad study habits, didn't really take it that serious, and I saw it as a stepping stone to go to special forces down the road. I wasn't focused on exactly what my task was, and it bit me. And I even they decided not to allow me back into the course. And for me, it was like I thought the world was ending. I was 18 years old, so I was very emotional about it. And I thought when I called my stepdad, who was a Green Beret and who I looked up to, and I told him that I failed EOD, I thought he would be incredibly disappointed in me. I thought, that's it. Like, I'm a freaking failure, all that stuff. And what I found was one, he supported me, offered me some guidance, told me to essentially pick myself back up and continue, pushing forward. But what I learned out of it is like, we have so much pressure on ourselves and we have this like image in our mind of what people are going to think or they're going to say about us if we don't succeed at something, especially something like this that's super challenging. And it really takes a hit on our ego when we start picturing all of that taking place. But 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, when you fail something, especially something as challenging as this, like the people who are in your corner and the people that actually matter in your life are going to be proud of you for putting yourself out there, and they're going to support you through that process or the transition period of pursuing another goal or going back to selection. Now, coming back from selection, I would say, like, did you get an NTR or do you have another date? And if you got another date, then it would probably be a depiction of your resilience and your true desire to be a Green Beret if you went back to selection and gave it another shot. Because I can't tell you how many guys I've met on the teams. They might keep it quiet or lie or something, but how many guys I've met on the teams that went to selection multiple times? It is very, very common. So if you don't get selected the first time, don't think that your world is over, your goals are shattered. It's a depiction of who you are forever. It's not even a depiction of who you are. It's just a depiction of how you did in that 3 week freaking period. Like, there's another opportunity to get your performance where you need to do it or change a mindset, improve upon something that they told you that you need to improve on, and then go back and reattack it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I would say the biggest thing is, one, don't beat yourself up if you don't get selected. Not everybody can get selected, and that's a fact. Um, and like John said, it's not a depiction of who you are; it's a depiction of how you performed, right? So it has nothing to do with your individual self, right? It's not about who you are; it's about how you performed and how you fit into this role or this job that you're trying to basically do an interview for. So don't take it to heart as you're not worthy or you're not capable or you're not a good person. It's none of those things. It's literally it is a 3 week job interview that you just didn't get the job. So don't take it personal. The other thing I would say, if you do get a chance to return to it, um, do a debrief. You got to look at yourself. That's a chance to look inward, and you actually can do a full self assessment. How did you actually perform? Where did you mess up? Where did your prep go wrong? What mistakes did you make? And then you need to capture that, while it's still raw, while it's still fresh, and come up with a new plan of action if you plan to go after that goal again. And then understand that with every door that closes, it's an old saying, but you know three more 4 more doors open. It's not that's not the end all be all. I know sometimes we have a habit uh, when we get fixated on things that we think this is the only way, right? This is the only thing that we can do, in life, and this is our only road. We spend so much time investing into this thing, but we fail to realize all the opportunities that are constantly around us all the time. So we ask for we ask for strength in things. We ask for resilience. We ask for all of these things to be developed inside of us, and we're developing those things by trying to accomplish those goals. Um, and sometimes when we fall short of those goals, we don't realize all the things that we develop that point us in a different direction. So understanding that even though you might not have accomplished the goal, that you set out to achieve, you have developed things, in the process, and those things could be used for other goals, other things in your life. So take it, take it for what it is, and do a self-assessment. And whether you return or not, um, you know, try to make yourself learn from it.
Take those lessons moving forward. Yeah, I think doing a self-assessment is huge. Like when I failed EOD, kind of like what I talked about, it was because I was a poor student. I didn't really put in the work required to be successful. And that might be true for guys going to selection. Maybe they slacked off on their workouts, or they slacked off on getting stuff ready. They didn't put in the work. They missed a couple holes in their prep. If you're honest with yourself about it, you can use it as an opportunity to open your eyes to what your next prep needs to look like, or if you do go pursue something else, the effort that's going to be required to be successful. But that's all we got today. Appreciate you guys watching. CJ, appreciate you coming on, man. Do you have any last words for the crew?
Oh, see you.
See you guys.
See ya.
Appreciate you.